Hey everybody, I'm Christian Schaff. Welcome to the Life Uncharted Podcast. Each week we sit down with extraordinary people who have stuck their nose in the wind, stepped off the beaten path, and forged their own path to success. What made them do it? How did they succeed? And how can we follow in their groundbreaking footsteps? You're about to find out right now. So here we go, episode 1. And what better than to do it with a friend? Today's guest is Dr. Eric Meyer. You may not know Eric, but he's one of my favorite dudes on the earth and is one of these guys that has the most incredible stories you've ever heard. He's a doctor, he's a climber, and he's a high-altitude medical specialist. He summited Everest 2 times and was part of an infamous expedition up K2, which resulted in one of the deadliest days in mountaineering history, a day that would have been much deadlier without Eric. We discuss Eric's business, delivering specialists and doctors to small-town hospitals in the West via his fleet of planes, providing trauma care in Afghanistan, and one of the last great mysteries of Mount Everest that he's focused on solving. It's always a great conversation when Eric's in town. I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. Let's go. Eric, thanks for joining me, man.
It's great to be here, Christian.
So this is exciting. For people that don't know Eric, and a lot of you probably are going to learn a lot about him today, probably one of my favorite dudes to sit down and have a beer with and just hear stories. You're like this onion. It's like I know these big things about you, and then it's like, oh, well, I was in Mosul and, working in a hospital there last week. And it's just, your life is one of adventure and business and everything else. And I just think that there's a lot to be learned by the way you've lived your life. So, again, thanks for being here. I'm really excited for people to get to meet you. And
Good, great.
Ready for this?
I'm lucky to be here. I feel like every day's a gift. I feel like I'm on my 4th or 5th life, maybe.
Yeah, I think you are, actually. We'll probably get to that, but especially in Park City, though, too. I mean, we in the last 24 hours, we've mountain biked, fly fished, worked on some business stuff, and
I love Park City. I live in a mountain town, Steamboat Springs, and there's some similarities, there's some differences. There's a great energy here. And
can't beat a mountain town, right?
Cannot. If it's not a 3 or 4 sport day, you're just not putting it out there enough.
Exactly. So, for people that don't know you, who is Eric Meyer? Give me the cliff notes, 4 or 5 points on who you are.
Yeah, well, I'm an anesthesiologist by training, but I've tried to sort of fill in some gaps in other ways with some humanitarian projects, some adventure activities over the years, and kind of try to keep reinventing myself, and I think that...
Dude, you're sandbagging.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah.
I knew you'd do this. I mean, you're a mountain climber, right? You've climbed some of the biggest peaks in the world.
Yeah, I've been up to the top of Everest 2 times, almost made it up to the top of K2, and about half a dozen other Himalayan peaks, and the terrain over there, the experience over there, the people that I've met, acting as the physician on these climbs has been really gratifying, and it's just one door seems to open another door when you're doing stuff like this. So
you've got a bunch of big mountains you've climbed. You're an anesthesiologist, but you also have a business where you're a pilot, right? And you basically started a business where you, if I get this right, you fly doctors to small mountain towns where they don't have specialists and provide specialized services, right?
Exactly, yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm being a doctor and a pilot, it's like 2 strikes against you already, and I've managed to survive that. So I always feel like I'm a little bit on borrowed time, but I take both of those extremely seriously, even though we have a lot of fun. A business I co-founded with Brian Shear, who's an orthopedic surgeon, about 7 years ago. It's called Rural Partners in Medicine. And basically what we've tried to do is attempt to correct the maldistribution of specialist physicians. There's, as you can imagine, in the cities throughout the U.S., there's too many specialists.
Right.
And in the rural areas, there's not enough. And so there's a lack of access to specialty surgical care, particularly in orthopedic surgery and farming and ranching communities.
How did you get into this?
Well, actually, I was getting in my airplane and flying around the western U.S., doing work in the operating room as an anesthesiologist for several years, kind of independently, and I met my business partner and co-founder Brian Shear, who was doing a similar thing in southeastern Wyoming, in Nebraska as well, and we decided, let's figure out a way that we can serve the needs of people living in small communities. Make it so that they don't have to leave their hometown, leave the farm. So if grandma needs her hip replaced, that she doesn't have to drive to the big city and take 3 or 4 members of the family with her. And also, we can create a sustainability model so the local hospital benefits from this increased level of services. And at the same time, we can approach our colleagues in medicine and say, hey, look, here's a different way of practicing medicine. So rather than working every single day of the month, maybe you can work half of that a little more efficiently and spend the rest of the time with your family.
So, like, how does this work? Like, I kind of picture this. Do you guys take off from Denver, or which city do you base out of? Because you're in Steamboat Springs.
We're in Steamboat Springs, and when we started it initially, I was doing some of the flying, and I was doing some of the doctoring, and we were connecting the dots. As we've grown, we've based more out of the Denver area, and that's where most of our physicians come out of now. And
so you have one plane, 2 how?
Well, we're up to 5 airplanes.
5 airplanes. And so is it kind of like people pull in the morning and a bunch of doctors climb into a plane and they take off? Like every day? Like how frequently do you do this?
We're flying probably about 17 or 18 days a month.
Wow.
And we're taking off, carrying anywhere from 2 to 5 physicians. We're dropping them off in different places throughout.
So it's like a school bus. It's
like a school bus.
Kind of in reverse,
Exactly.
I guess.
Right.
Everybody gets on at one spot and then you drop them. It's like the end of the day.
They drop them off and we pick them up.
Wow.
Sometimes the same day, oftentimes a couple days later.
Unbelievable.
And so the folks in these communities don't care so much that their doctor doesn't live there in the community. They just want to know that they're going to see the same person.
Right.
Week after week, month after month, and then that's what creates, I think, a trust relationship. Which, when we look at medicine and we look at so many avenues of our life, it becomes depersonalized with increased use of technology.
Right.
And this is particularly true in medicine with the electronic health record and with more and more emphasis being placed on what's the insurance status of the patient seeking care, and we wanted to create a care model that would allow our physicians to be able to take care of patients regardless of their payer status.
Well, and there's a human touch element too, right? Like I've had plenty of surgeries, and the worst is when you get this guy who obviously doesn't care, right? Like you're just like a job he has to do.
Yeah.
Or he or she, I should say. I'm thinking of a guy because my shoulder is still compromised because of a surgery I had where the dude was like, it was like Friday afternoon and he was out. And I always wondered, if he did it well or not. So having somebody you trust that's consistent, that knows you is like so critical, especially like older generations, right? Where this could be a little more serious, right?
It's so true. Yeah, it's so true. And the time to explain things, having people that are available for follow-up and patient education is so important in the older population. But even in the younger folks, we've got, for example, one orthopedic surgeon works with us is a former pro rodeo cowboy.
Oh, no way.
He can speak the language of these younger folks that are
right.
falling off, mountain bikes and dirt bikes and farm equipment, things like that. And there's an identifiability to that.
So that's the doctor/business side of your life. Now, I know you do a lot of mountain climbing, and a lot of times you're kind of the doctor on staff, but what came first? Like, how did this all start? Where did you grow up? Like, did you just one day decide, like, I'm going to start climbing mountains? Was there a progression?
Well, it was like anything. It started slowly in a small way. I grew up in a little town southeast Montana, and sort of began exploring the mountains in the Beartooths down south central Montana. gaining some technical skills and then spending summers down in the Tetons, climbing some bigger stuff and learning all the time. One thing led to another. I got into medical school in Seattle while I was there.
Were your parents doctors, or how did you get into the medical world?
I am guilty of falling into the congenital doctor mode. My father was a general surgeon.
Oh, okay.
Really advised me to think of other options, but being kind of the rebel middle child, I picked exactly what he was trying to steer me away from, perhaps.
Right.
And chose medicine. But it's been incredibly rewarding. It's one of those things where I think, regardless of what you do in life, you really should do it as though you would do it for free if you had to. And I've put that to the test. I think the most enjoyment that I get out of medicine is when I volunteer and give my services away for free overseas.
Well, that's something you and I talk about a lot, is following your passion. And if you do something you're passionate about, you're going to be better at it. Right?
Chances are you're going to be really good at something you're passionate about. And I tell young people, that I talk to about career issues, that, hey, take your time, figure out what really stirs your passion. You don't have to, fill in the blanks all at once when you're 18 and declare what you want to do with your life. It's a big world out there.
I never understood that, man.
It's changed so much, right?
Yeah.
In one generation, there are job descriptions that would be, completely foreign to the previous generation.
Totally. I never understood. I get to college and kids knew what they wanted to be. Like, I didn't even know where my first class was, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be an accountant, or I'm gonna be a lawyer." And I'm like, You're 17 years old. Like, how do you make that decision so early? I still feel like I'm figuring out who I want to be every day.
I think it's important to keep a little bit of that unknown and
right.
keep things sort of a mystery and keep exploring. For me, the most interesting thing that I wanted to study was medicine.
Yeah.
And I was interested in physiology. We got wrapped up into a physiology study of simulating decompression on Everest, which was basically meant we had 10 guys in a 10 by 20 foot chamber for 6 weeks, and all the while they were sucking the air out of this chamber to simulate a high altitude climb. And
oh, no way.
And so you really got to see what high altitude did to your body.
Is that what got you interested in Everest initially?
It did. It got me interested in Everest, and one of my favorite mentors, Dr. Charlie Houston, was in charge of this study. And as people that have followed mountaineering history, he led the first American K2 expedition in 1938, and then the second one in 1953, neither of which got the summit, but both came very close. Mm-hmm. And the thing that Charlie really impressed me with, and he passed away at the age of 94 several years ago, was climb for the love of it, not for the glory or other reasons, and always remind yourself what are the motivation behind what you're doing, with any adventure.
Well, that's a pretty interesting point, because as I know, and we can talk about this, but like that K2 climb you had, which didn't turn out very well for a lot of people, and I think, as you've explained it, and I want you to talk about this, but people make decisions for the wrong reasons sometimes, and that can have long-standing consequences, right? I mean, let's talk about that a little bit.
Here you go with arguably one of the most difficult mountains in the world, K2.
So when was this, by the way?
This was 2008.
2008, you're climbing K2, which, for those people that maybe don't know, like, compare Everest and K2. Everest gets all the glory, generally speaking. Right? It's taller.
Everest is taller by about 250 feet, but K2 is uniformly steeper, more technical. It's more remote. The weather's less predictable.
It's deadly.
It's deadly. It averages 45 degrees in steepness from top to bottom.
And like, of the people that have attempted, what percentage make it to the top? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, well, it would be somewhere under 10%. And you're talking about on a commercially guided Everest trip, probably odds are 70 to probably 85% that you will make it to the top.
Any idea what like the fatality rate is in K2?
Well, statistically, for every 4 people that climb the mountain, only 3 come down alive. And that brings into, one of the points of, it's not just getting to the top of the mountain, it's getting back down safely. That's the challenge.
So, knowing that you're playing Russian roulette at some level, like, what made you sign up for it when you did this?
Well, it was sort of an organic decision amongst a couple of groups of interconnected friends that kind of gelled and turned into sort of an international.
And you'd done Everest twice at this point?
I had done Everest once.
Once?
At that point.
Okay.
Yeah, and a couple other Himalayan peaks. So I was certainly not the most experienced person by Himalayan climbing standards on the mountain, but I wasn't the least either.
How big was the group?
Yeah, we had 8 people.
8 people total?
Yeah, we had 8 people. It all came down to essentially dealing with 2 months of really difficult weather, and all the teams on K2 were eager to get to the top. So when we had a weather forecast of several days of good weather, we all
went for it.
Forces, thinking that there's strength in numbers, and if we all sort of pitch in, carrying rope and supplies towards the top, then we all stand a better chance of getting to the top, which was flawed logic, really.
So I want to get into that, but let's back it up a little bit. So how long between when you said, okay, I'm gonna do, you're in Steamboat Springs and you're like, I'm doing it, till you get to K2? Like, how much? I know there's training involved, right? And the gear, and tell me how much training is involved, how intense that is, how much gear do you have, what all goes into just getting to the base of the mountain?
Yeah, well, it's generally the training starts well over a year in advance, and the logistical planning about the same, if not longer. Training means different things to different people when they're talking about getting to the top of a high mountain. For me, it mostly involves putting on muscle mass, strength training, that kind of thing.
Because the mountain takes it off you,
The mountain just melts it off you. I put on about 25 pounds. It took me a year to put on 25 pounds of mostly muscle weight. Lost it all up there.
Wow.
Your body becomes very what we call catabolic, which means it feeds off itself, feeds off your own muscle and fat in equal proportions up high in the mountain. Your appetite goes to zip. You're not sleeping well. Your energy level suffers. And really you're training to be able to tolerate uncomfortable conditions where your body's not thriving.
And are there Sherpas on K2 like there are on Everest, or is this a totally different situation?
It's a very, very different situation on K2. Now, only in the last couple of years has K2 been commercially guided, and there have been some successes. Back in 2008, that was certainly not the case.
Right.
There were several different parties, though, including some one party that did hire some Nepalese Sherpas to help them put up fixed lines and carry supplies, things like that. Our party had one superstar Sherpa who was a regular member of our team, Sering Dorje Sherpa, who, as it was the only one on our team of 8 to actually reach the summit and make it down safely, which he did, all the while rescuing a couple of people on the way down. I mean,
I think you've described him as the Michael Jordan of Sherpas, right?
No question.
Yeah.
No question. His company, Rowalling Excursion.
What makes him so special?
Very successful. I think it's a combination of skill and personality and extreme ability in high mountains. He's now summited Everest 16 times, but he's also
16 times
climbed over half of the world's 8,000 meter peaks, and he's gifted that way. Sering Dorje Sherpa is literally world class.
So you're a year out, that year you've been training. You put on 25 pounds of muscle. You get all your gear together. People are coming from all over the world. Is it kind of to use this word, but is it a bit of an uncharted, we get there and we figure it out as we go, or is it a very clear, Because Everest is pretty structured at this point, right? You do this, you do that.
Yeah. Everest is a lot more circumscribed. With K2, you're going to face some things that you're going to get some curveballs.
Right.
That you won't be fully prepared for.
Like, give me an example of what's a curveball.
Well, in terms of the conditions, K2 it gets more difficult and steeper and more technical the higher you get on the mountain. The closer you get to the summit, the harder the climbing becomes. So that's obviously problematic as the air gets thin and your resources dwindle. You've got to have a point where you're willing and able to pull the plug when things aren't going your way.
Right.
And it's difficult because you also have to have so much invested in being there for in the first place. You got to have a lot of motivation. You got to have a lot of strength and stamina.
Well, what do you think it costs? Just like, what's the cost of making an attempt at K2?
Well, it's actually not as expensive as you might think compared to hiring a commercial guide on Everest. If a group gets together and pools resources as we did, we would probably spending a quarter of what a person.
But still meaningful money.
Meaningful money.
I mean, you could take that money and have the nicest safari of your life somewhere,
car.
and buy a nice car. Right.
There's a lot of times sitting there in the tent in the middle of a 2 or 3 day storm. You're asking yourself, what am I doing here? Should I have taken up a different sport?
Right. Well, so how long? So you're at the base. How long is the journey? Like, is it a week, 2 weeks?
You're talking about a trip that's 2 to 3 months in duration, and part of that time is spent acclimatizing or getting used to the altitude.
Right.
So building up your red blood cell mass, your blood chemistries, your breathing.
And that's just something you can't do anywhere else but there, right? Because you need the elevation.
You can't do any other way.
Right.
And generally that takes about 3 weeks to a month.
Do different bodies acclimate faster than other ones?
They do.
So I'd say you're probably predisposed for this, knowing, like, we went mountain biking last night. I don't know how you go so fast up the mountains, but like my age versus your age, I should be pulling you along, and that has never happened in my life. I mean, you just have it in you.
I did bring along a bungee cord because I thought you were going to be pulling. Flip it onto the back of your
downhill, maybe.
Everyone's different, and acclimatize at different rates. And that's an important thing to keep in mind on these longer expeditions is that everyone's going to have good days and everyone's going to have bad days.
Right.
But you basically want to create a level of fitness and preparedness to be able to weather the uncertainty and the difficult times because they're going to happen.
Right. So you have to plan for A, B, C, D, E, F, like the whole way down. Right. And when you that goes back to picking your team and every little piece you bring with, it's like, you're hoping these things don't happen, but if they do, you have to be ready for them.
You do. And you have to have some level of objectivity. For example, in K2, when we compared the condition of the ice towers or seracs that were just underneath the summit, is the most difficult and dangerous portion of that climb. And we had looked at photographs from the first time we got to the mountain 2 months earlier, and things looked a whole lot more dangerous. So
they had changed, or what?
It changed a lot. And when we looked at those, and when we realized how many people were trying to climb the mountain in one day, and what a conga line it had developed, we just had to make the right decision. It was like, we've got to turn around. It's too dangerous. If we're going to be coming back down through this really dangerous section all in the dark, these ice towers are going to collapse. It's not a question of if, but when. And in fact, that did happen. A total of 13 people died.
13 out of how many?
13 out of, of the summit attempt. The people attempting the summit, that's probably about 1/3 of the people.
Holy moly. So your expedition, you're out there for a couple months, and were things pretty good for a while? Like, take me through just cliff notes of your trip and what that was like and what happened.
Well, I mean, so you're talking about a trek into the base camp alone that takes 8 days. along the Indus River. Beautiful trek, but very, very rugged. Our team of 8 was traveling with 125 porters to bring everything we would need for 3 months in along with us. So you can imagine this traveling circus.
It's like biblical kind of.
Yeah, this caravan, and at the end of every day, I would hold a medical clinic and treat everything from blisters to rotten teeth to orthopedic problems, and
really,
you're out there. The longer you're out there, the worse it is, and I mean, exposure is just that way, right. So you can only be so prepared for that. You can only carry so much in your kit on a summit day. You've got to whittle it down to the real essentials. You've got to hone your thinking to constantly reevaluate your situation,
right.
and not get sort of target fixation on your goal.
So you guys turn around, there were people above you then?
Correct.
And what time of day is this?
Yeah. Well, we were turning around in late morning, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Make a decision that quickly?
Making a decision
Just, we're
like
a couple
that.
hours behind, and
We were at least a couple hours behind. Yeah.
So then you get back to the camp relatively quickly.
We did, and no sooner were we back to Camp 4 when one of the climbers fell and was still moving, still alive, and we, Frederick Strang and I, departed camp immediately to try to save this gentleman's life. By the time we reached him, he had perished, and one thing led to another in terms of trying to get his body down to a more accessible location. Another climber fell and lost his life. So
trying to get the body down.
Correct. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
So tragedy started there, and then it
just kept getting worse.
It just kept getting worse.
I mean, I saw the movie. Actually,
Yeah.
It was a Sundance here. You and I went to the premiere.
Yes.
The Summit, right?
The Summit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know, for me it felt like a worst nightmare watching that.
Pretty riveting movie.
It's kind of like one of those like Lone Survivor where it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and it's like, how does anybody get out of this?
Yeah. And that's the thing about a project like Summiting K2 is so committing that you will, when it gets to the summit day, you will not be in a position where you can retreat easily. You will be in deep,
right? Whether
you end up touching the top or not,
right?
And it's gonna take every bit of energy and stamina that you've got.
So how long are you guys up at that top camp then, watching all of this transpire above you?
Well, the folks that summited started returning back to Camp 4 around midnight, so around 24 hours later. And
for people that have never climbed, and I'm a very beginner climber, but the interesting thing about mountain climbing to me is like you celebrate at halftime. Right? But like the last half's the hardest part.
Exactly.
So just because you're there is like, it doesn't mean anything. Right? I mean, that's like one of the weirdest things, because even the little ones I've done, like Kilimanjaro and Grand Teton and Rainier, it's like you have to kind of stay vigilant, right? Yeah. And like quickly let that celebration go. You got to stay focused.
You got to stay focused. Most accidents, in mountaineering happen on the way down, not the way up. And in fact, that's what happened here. The seracs or the ice towers started falling around 9 p.m.
How big are these? Like, what are we talking about?
We're talking about a couple hundred feet. You're talking about 3 football fields of overhanging ice that's kind of all waiting to come down. And
just tipping over like dominoes.
Coming over like anywhere from boxcar size to refrigerator size chunks of ice. And so when these started coming down, and this was a result of actually having good weather, so clear skies, warm temperatures during the day, but cold temperatures at night created that expansion contraction of the ice that started bringing these things down like dominoes, and took down the fixed ropes in the most critical section called the bottleneck couloir. And that made it extremely difficult for people to get down that. Siring Dorje Sherpa was able to down climb that with one ice axe, and one of the Korean Sherpas hanging off his climbing harness. Act of heroism that's unbelievable. But made it down and realized that got to keep going, even though the risk is super high. You got to put your head down and make the best of it. Take the risk.
Because if you stay up there, you're done, right?
You're pretty well done.
And isn't it at that elevation when you're that cold, like your body kind of tricks you to get really comfortable, right? I mean, that's what I've heard.
Exactly. And you're tired. It's very, very tempting to sit down and say, I'm just going to rest for 10 minutes. Well, I can tell you from both sides of Everest, the north and the south, having seen dozens of dead bodies, that's exactly what most of those people
10-minute breaks
were thinking when they were on their way down is, hey, you go ahead without me. I'm just going to sit down and rest, and I never got up again. So, yeah, it does trick you into thinking you can sit down and rest, and you've really got to keep going. You got to keep your teammates gathered around and not get separated.
I mean, this has to be like one of the most emotional, difficult situations a human could possibly go through, right? I've been to Iraq a bunch, as you have, yes. And I've been there's times when you feel so far away from home, mm-hmm. and it's like, I just wish I was home right now. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you lived through this, but if I'm counting correctly, you've done Everest twice, and you'd done it once before this.
Yes.
So you go back and then do Everest. Like, what is it that makes you keep doing this after something so heavy?
So traumatic. Yeah. Well, I think that part of what draws me back to the big mountains is the ability to be useful in a medical provider role, mm-hmm. And in fact, that's what I get a lot of enjoyment out of doing now, is helping other people get to the top and achieve their dreams, and using my medical skills to try to keep people healthy and safe, and
right.
And experience that incredible joy. And
how many climbs have you done since K2?
Oh, probably 6.
6.
Yeah.
And you have more planned?
I have more planned, although I have to be honest. I choose my trips and climbing partners more selectively now than I used to.
You wanted me to go on a trip once.
Yeah.
To Everest.
We're still, yeah.
Is that still happening?
We'll get you on
That's
one of these.
About 5 years ago.
Yeah, we'll get you on one of these. Yeah.
I think I herniated some discs in my neck that year, and I think it never happened anyway. But I remember you asking me, and I have a hard time saying no to things.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it like freaked me out. I was honored, but it freaked me out that you even asked. I was like, how do I say no to, like, I think I have to go.
I'm still very interested in this mystery of, did Mallory and Irvine actually become the first people to summit Everest in 1924?
Yeah, so tell that story.
It's a huge mystery, and there's been books written and a film made, and this was back when they were wearing leather,
right,
leather boots, hobnail boots, wool, tweed garments, and no down, but they're incredibly motivated, skilled climbers on this British team that essentially disappeared into the clouds very high up on the mountain on the north side. And
they were like, they had a telescope on them. They were watching them, right? They were like 500 feet from the top or something like that.
Very close, yes.
And then the clouds came in, and then they were dead.
And they were they weren't seen again,
right,
until 1999, when Mallory's body was found.
Mm-hmm. And how did it take that long to find his body? Was it off in a weird spot, or
it was in a less traveled spot, and
he had fallen?
He had fallen.
Right.
Yeah, he had fallen. The rope was broken. He had a broken leg, and his climbing partner, Andrew Irvine's body, was never found, and also never found was the camera that they know the two had, and so it was not on Mallory. The assumption is that it's.
And you said that it was a Kodak camera, and the Kodak says that the film's probably freeze dried and still good up there.
Images
right?
probably still recoverable, and that would undoubtedly show whether they had reached the top or not, because if you don't get a picture on the top, it probably didn't happen.
So Hillary's credited with being the first one up, right?
Correct.
And that's how many years later?
Yeah, that was 1953.
So when were these guys?
1924.
So 20-some years later, somebody finally did it.
Right.
And if you could prove these guys actually made it to the top, that changes the whole game.
It changes the whole game. It's one of the great mountaineering mysteries of all time.
And the idea was to go find the other body in the camera.
Correct. Still has not been found. It's up there somewhere.
That sounds amazing.
Sooner or later, it'll be found.
Somebody will find it.
It'll be found, and but it does bring into question that issue of, did you really succeed on a mountain if you didn't come back alive?
Right.
I mean, there's a certain credit, of course, that's due, but I always say, climb high, climb hard, but come home safely, and
right.
and that's you constantly have to remind yourself of that.
Is the K2 thing the scariest thing you've ever been a part of? Because we were talking today about, we have military. You and I have both been to a lot of forward operating bases and joint security stations in Afghanistan and Iraq, and which is kind of a different thing, right? Yeah. That's almost like lightning striking, and you never know when it's going to hit. But like, how do those compare to you? Well, first, you're a guy that, I know for me, like, the more scary situations I'm in, the more comfortable I am in scary situations, right? And you're probably the person I know that has the most of those. Like, what's the one time where you remember, like, wow, that was way too close?
Several close calls. Coming down for the last time on K2, I had a rope break on me in rappel, and got a complete 360-degree view, inverted view of the Karakoram Range as I was falling about 50 feet. I was caught by a secondary rope that I was clipped into, fortunately, or I wouldn't be here talking with you.
No way.
And just a couple months ago, I was climbing a peak called the Carson's Pyramid in West Papua New Guinea. It's one of the 7 summits, and amazing rock climb. 2 rappels from the end, I hear rock, and I swung over to the side, out of the main gully, and got grazed by about a 50, 60-pound boulder that fortunately didn't shatter my femur or my pelvis or kill me, but left me thinking, I dodged another bullet.
Right.
How many more of these?
Well, how many more are there?
I can't answer that.
Well, I mean, how many more situations are you going after? Are there things you still, like, are you going back to K2?
Hard to say. It would have to be with the right folks,
right,
and the right circumstance. Haven't ruled it out, but
right.
There are a lot of other amazing places in this world to go adventure, and I really have gravitated more towards ski mountaineering in the last several years. Mm-hmm. I'd like to do more of that. Ski descents around the world in remote,
right,
interesting regions. But I think it's important to just constantly reevaluate what you're doing and whether you receive a lot of joy from it, or whether you're just pursuing something because somebody told you it was a good idea.
So speaking of joy, like, what's the highlight then of all these? Is standing on Everest the highlight? Is it something much more obscure and like a moment, or?
I don't know. As far as joy, I think it would probably be a year ago proposing to my girlfriend on the summit of Kilimanjaro. It's a hike, but it's still over 19,000 feet,
yeah. And beautiful up there.
In seeing her get to the top and being able to enjoy that amazing view together and ask for her hand in marriage was probably about as special as it's ever gotten for me.
That's awesome, man. So you're going to raise some little mountain climbers now, and
we're going to see how that turns out. Sure hope so.
What do you think you want your legacy to be? Oh, well, actually, before we go to that, I want to talk a little bit about the military stuff too, because you and I have shared that experience.
Sure.
I know you through Rob Powers, who I got Rob involved with military tours, and then Rob's got his whole thing going now. And you and I have never been on a trip together, but I've seen your photos in a lot of the same places I've been.
Right.
How do those climates feel to you? How do those environments feel to somebody like you? Is it still, like, for me, it feels really foreign. I remember the first time I went over, we flew from Minneapolis to Amsterdam. And I remember Amsterdam being super green, right?
Yeah.
And then from Amsterdam to Kuwait, and I was like, whoa, this is a whole different world.
Yeah.
But Kuwait to Iraq was like going 8 stories down into hell more.
Yeah.
You know, I remember getting off an Osprey in Iraq, and suddenly nobody's smiling, everybody's got guns, everybody's fully kitted up.
Yeah.
It's head down, it's move, it's run, it's
100 degrees hot in a
so hot.
Brutal environment.
I always tell people it's like when you're checking a pizza in the oven. Now just imagine you just walked into that and spent 8 hours in that all day.
Yeah.
And your body's 12 hours off, so you want to fall asleep at lunch, and at lunch
And I've had similar feelings on Everest and K2 is that I'm only here temporarily. I really don't belong here.
Right.
Like I'm on borrowed time a little bit.
Literally with the death zone, you are.
You are. Yeah. The clock is ticking, and in terms of the hostile environments, in the Middle East, it's been that way. I feel that there's a lot of good that can be done from being over there, though, and I've seen that firsthand. Working in a combat surgical hospital last year in Mosul during.
So what kind of stuff are you doing? Is it trauma, or is it more just medical that people haven't had access to for years?
No, this is full trauma resuscitation
from the wars that are still going on over there.
Right. It's IEDs. Sniper wounds, mortar attacks on civilians, mostly kids, in fact. Getting ISIS out of Mosul was something that was necessary and took a long time. Extracted a huge human toll. The liberation of Mosul was the largest urban conflict since World War II, and in working in a close quarters trauma hospital right on the front lines gave you a lot of camaraderie with people that you're working with. I mean, very similar to climbing a mountain.
Right. I don't think people know how good they have it here. I've always said if I was president, like, everybody'd serve 1 year in the military. Yeah. Just there's so many amazing things to be seen and to respect and understand about.
No question.
What's happening in other parts of the world and what our military is doing.
Right, or the Peace Corps and all the great work that's done through that organization, and teaching young people to be able to do more with less, I think, is something that doesn't receive enough emphasis in our schools. And
what do you mean by that? Do more with less?
That means engage your brain, engage your your situational thinking. And learn to work with what you have, and improvise. Right. And the old duct tape and baling wire thing. I was recently on a mission trip to Cuba, and in fact, actually did repair a bus, a busted radiator hose with duct tape, which the bus driver had never seen, and worked brilliantly.
They'd never seen duct tape?
No.
Oh, man.
No. He looked at it like it was paper tape. It's like, no, it's like mas fuerte.
Well, dude, I grew up racing snowmobiles in Wisconsin. Like, I fixed everything with duct tape.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept a roll in my
pocket. You're
a
farm kid. So you grew up having to create solutions.
Patch together and keep moving
every single day. And along the same lines is be able to create fun. Be able to make your own fun. But, and that happens less and less with kids these days. It's more programmed and electronic.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface with you, and I'm sure we're going to talk all night. But, I think it's important to, learn from people like you. And not only have you been really successful in a lot of different different kind of areas, but you also, have done them all in a lifetime. Like, you've lived 3 or 4 lifetimes at the same time. And I think for a lot of people out there, it's like, how do I get out of a funk, or how do I make the most out of my life? I mean, I think about it all the time. I always say, like, life is not a dress rehearsal, right?
That's right.
Like, when today's gone, I don't get it back.
You don't get it back, right?
So I'm not going to waste it.
Yeah.
But for you, like, do you have any mantras or any, like, tips you'd give people on if somebody's like, man, this sounds great, I don't even know where to begin. Like, what's the process? How do you get to a life like this?
Well, I think it comes down to how you orient your life. You know, if you have doubt, if you're depressed, if you're uncertain, start by helping someone else, and a person will find empowerment through that. There's no question that's been a guiding force in my life. My grandparents were medical missionaries over in India.
Oh, wow.
Spent 40 years over there, built a hospital, and I've been fortunate to be able to go back and work at that hospital and seeing what their legacy is. And gosh, if my legacy could be anything, it would be trying to help lift other people up.
It's funny, I have a little wooden sign on my house, I think my mom gave me or something, but it says something like, the miracle is the more you give, the more you get. And it's so true, right? Anytime I've ever taken a job because the salary was good, I hated my life.
Right.
And anytime I've just been like, let's go, let's do this, the best things have happened, and I go to bed with a smile on my face.
Yeah, I mean, the real beauty in life is in the discovery of what lies beneath the surface, and the only way you get to that are by digging down, right? Testing yourself, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, and trying to make this world a better place.
How important do you think, like, physical challenges are to the mental capacity of things? Like, for me, I wake up in the morning and I have a hard workout one way or another. And when I sit down at my desk, it's like I have a clear mind. It's almost a reward to sit down, you know?
Yeah.
And then everything flows. But if I get up and I'm lazy and I don't do it, I'm not the same person.
Yeah. And so I think there's something both physically and mentally that goes on with testing yourself, working out, that feeds your psyche.
Yeah, you're a doctor. Are there actually chemicals?
There are neurochemicals that are released when you're working out that calm you down, that help you focus your mental attention. And the more we find out about that, this is probably really key to living a long, healthy life.
So if you were going to tell somebody, here's how to start down whatever your path may be, it's challenge yourself physically and mentally, right?
Right. Pursue your passions.
Follow your heart. Do what you love.
Your heart. And keep pulling down.
Keep pulling down? What's that mean?
that means keep working on climbing up.
Gotcha. Like pulling.
Yeah, keep pulling down.
Pulling down, which lifts you up the mountain.
Lifts you up. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a good place to end, I think. Eric Meyer.
It's been great.
Thank you so much. You don't have an Instagram handle or anything like that, right? You're in the mountains all the time.
Yeah, I don't.
Anywhere people can follow along with what you're doing, or.
You can Google me. Right.
Dr. Eric Meyer, Steamboat Springs, Colorado. The Summit, you could watch it. What was the book you said earlier?
Yeah. Buried in the Sky.
Buried in the Sky. Anything else you think people... Do you have any other favorite books or like stuff that you really... Besides a pilot manual or something?
Yeah, I read a lot of those. I think probably that's as good as any.
Cool.
And, I'm blessed and honored to be here.
Oh man, thank you. Well, thanks for doing this, and that's all we got. Thanks, Eric. All right. Cool.